There was a report in the Mint newspaper about the prices of eggs rising, while the price of chicken has actually gone down. It might seem surprising at first, but it isn't. Eggs are in short supply, and more so in India's neighborhood, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. And this is what we are going to discuss in this edition of On Point. Eggs are a very valuable part of the agricultural market. So what is happening in the price of eggs? Well, for one, there's climate change. Now, you might be surprised to know that eggs and crude oil, yes, crude oil, have similar volatility characteristics. Think climate change, think transport costs getting impacted from those climate change, bird flu for eggs or chicken, COVID for crude. Look at this graph. The prices move in the fairly similar fashion for both these commodities. Some basics here. The hen mostly needs maize as a feedstock. So of the total maize production, about 47 goes for feeding the poultry. A good percentage above that goes for spiking petrol, ethanol production, and the rest of it is for other users. So, if there is a drought, the entire supply chain gets affected. And this year, drought has been there in southern India. Karnataka is the largest producing state for maize. Then there are other states like Telangana, Gujarat, Bihar, UP, all of these produce maize, but it has been affected. But this drought has been much more pronounced in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, and there's an economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So all of these countries, the price of eggs has shot up massively, which means the demand for eggs from India has also shot up consequently. That explains the rise in the price of eggs, but not of chicken.
Egg prices are expected to soar again, but not because of inflation.
This is due to an avian flu outbreak at the largest egg producer in the country.
If that sort of a price rise happens, then can smuggling be far behind? Look at this evidence. Last year, the US Customs was flooded with reports of smuggling of eggs from across the border with Mexico. Remember, Mexico is the world's largest producer of eggs. We haven't heard of similar very large scale smuggling across the Indian borders, but I'll not be surprised if those tales start coming out soon. So we could soon have a global egg index of misery. Already in Pakistan elections, eggs have been a very major talking point. But jokes apart, the point is, what does egg do to agricultural income? Well, it does a lot in terms of raising it. So does maize. Maize, eggs, they form a very strong move away from wheat and rice for farmers. But to ensure that the final product reaches the market, is sold at a reasonable price, you need several things to happen. And that is a case of agricultural reforms. It's a very interesting reform because these reforms cannot happen, as a sort of a central policy. It requires tinkering at the edges. For instance, egg selling cannot obviously be dependent on price support. Though of course it has happened in Bangladesh. They have set a cap on how much price of eggs there are. But let's not be there. The big thing that you need is infrastructure support for those egg consignments to reach the market, which means that there has to be a lot of marketing reforms and infrastructure reforms, roads, connectivity, ability to move, since it's a very perishable commodity, how fast you can have a cold chain where eggs can come from the villages or the poultry yards to the market. These make for a very useful index of reforms. So, keeping egg prices smart is also something like keeping stock markets smart. It requires efficiency of information, movement of correct practices. That's what helps the producer of eggs. That's what helps the retail guys to come into the stock market. It's the same process. So since eggs are so useful and so easy to develop that if done well, they could be the next milk revolution. If, however, left unattended, they could create a crisis. Consumers often perceive rising prices first through the price of rising eggs, or rather the price of eggs that have risen. So there's a political crisis that could be triggered if these prices are not within control. But if done well, they have a wonderful tale to tell of proteins, of good health, of good income. And that's all from this edition of On Point. For a detailed description of what we discussed here, please visit my Substack. The link is in the description below. Thank you.